Hello, welcome back to my fave fanfics. Here, I post, well, my favorite fanfictions, if that wasn't obvious. I do hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Please like and subscribe for more content. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome, my dear faves, to the fifth part of What If Ichigo and His Family Transported to the World of My Hero Academia. Credit goes to DuchessEglantine. Chapter 26. The Truth at Last. Kazui sat on his bed fiddling with a stress ball, twirling it around in his hands as he stared off deep in thought. Penny for your thoughts? Tugata's face asked where it peeked up through Kazui's bed covers. Yeesh. Kazui said as he jerked and flung his ball up in the air. Can't you take the stairs like a normal person? Nah, they're always up to something, Tugata said with a smile. It took Kazui a moment before he got it. His lips quirked up. He picked the ball and up and rotated it between his hands. What did Dad mean? By the strength of one's heart, Kazui asked slowly. Tugata's face spun around and he moved up and out to stand in the room, sitting down in Kazui's desk chair. Tugata said and he rubbed his chin, that's hard to pin down. He probably meant a lot of things. Like being brave when facing a stronger opponent than you. Or choosing to do a good thing rather than something that makes you look good. He folded his arms behind his head and spun around in lazy circles. Why are you still here when Dad's in a coma? Kazui asked. Well, someone had to do the bun runs. Who else is going to baguette the people of Hosu? Tugata asked. Kazui rolled his eyes, and he looked down at his hands. The guy who went after Mom, Kazui said, he was really bad, wasn't he? Tugata reached over and ruffled Kazui's hair. Kazui batted him away. All Might has taken on the case, Tugata said seriously, and your dad's friends have been coming by the house a couple times each day. Chad even took me out to do Teach's patrol route last night. Tugata looked out the window. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you're surrounded by people who can keep your mom safe. And Mr. Ishida said that Teach is due to wake up soon. Maybe a couple days at most. Everything's going to be fine. Kazui grinned at the reassurance. Thanks Tugata, Kazui said. Tugata gave him a thumbs up. Anytime. Now let's go train in the yard. Kazui groaned as he flopped back on his bed. Training with you is no fun, Kazui huffed. Tugata gave him finger guns and a wink. It's no fun now, but wait until you get better. Then it'll be loads of fun. Quote. I want to know everything about them. All for One said as he clenched his fist tightly. Sure thing, I'll bring you everything I can get my hands on, Jiren said as he tucked an envelope into his coat pocket and left. Garaki. Yes, All for One? Garaki asked. What's your progress on that presence hiding Nomu? Quote. It'll be a little while yet, he needs time to mature. Give it a couple months, and we should see favorable results, Garaki said calmly. Good, All for One said as he touched the presence hiding quirks he'd merged together within him. He disliked unpleasant surprises. He touched his armless shoulder with a frustrated grimace. How very unpleasant indeed, he muttered to himself. Years of planning and preparation had just been pushed back by an unseemly amount of time. With foes of such daunting power, they would need to amass much more power than originally anticipated. Letting Shigaraki do as he pleased was no longer viable. Garaki? Quote. Yes, master? Quote. What news have we received regarding that rumor of quirk erasing bullets? Garaki put a hand to his chin and hummed. Not much, I'm afraid. If I could get a sample that would be preferred, but as of now they're only that. Rumors. Keep me updated on any progress on that end, All For One said as he tapped his fingers on his arm rest. Of course, All For One, Garaki said. Midoriya clenched and unclenched his hands in wonder. When he had gotten checked over, he'd been told that the previous damage done to his body had been healed completely. It's like he had never broken a bone or gotten a single scar before in his life. Soft, unblemished hands, no dull background aches. He felt sturdy in a way he couldn't remember feeling. Do scars really have that big of an effect? Midoriya wondered as he stared at his hands. Izuku. Dinner. Inko called. Coming. Izuku called back. The villain group was arrested, suffering one death in their assault of the children's summer camp. The students are presently unharmed, and further investigations are pending. Coma-man is presently in a coma as a result of the use of his super move when defending the students and defeating the Nomu present on scene. The news anchor said as an aerial view of the damage was shown. The image shown on screen is of a location that once housed a lush forest and a tall mountain with a cliffside view. Coma-man used this force after ensuring that no innocent life would be put in danger and destroyed the Nomu, which are likened to quirk-enhanced zombies, before they could cause any further damage. In other news, the Hosu relief efforts are picking up. The villain responsible is still at large. All Might is on the case, and investigations are ongoing. The villain reportedly targeted the wife of Coma-man, Kurosaki Orihime, for her world-class healing quirk. If anyone has information regarding this villain, please contact the number on screen. Nedzu sat across from Kurosaki Orihime with a very serious frown and a member of the Hero Public Safety Commission beside him. Khan's soul pager lay between them in an evidence bag. Mrs. Kurosaki, do you recognize this device? The commission representative asked seriously. Orihime looked at it and perked up. That's Khan's soul pager. I thought I'd lost it, she said happily as she reached for it. The man put his hand down over top of the device to stop her. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, he said. We need you to tell us about the contents of it. The contents? Orihime wondered with a frown. Nedzu pulled out a laptop and turned it around to face her, pressing a button to start a video. Ichigo stood in his Shinigami uniform cutting down a horde of Ijuka's class Manos Grandes swarming the streets of Karakura town. Oh wow. That's a really old video. Orihime said as she smiled. Can you tell us where this is located? Nedzu asked with a small frown. Karakura town, Japan. She said cheerfully with a friendly smile. I've never heard of a Karakura town, the commissioner said with a frown. Nedzu had received no hits when he searched the name prior to meeting with Mrs. Kurosaki. There were several signs on shops in the video with the town name. That's not surprising, it's in a different dimension. We fled when they ordered the Quincy genocide, she said calmly. Quincy genocide? Nedzu asked with wonder coloring his tone. Mrs. Kurosaki looked sad. It's not the first time Soul Society ordered a mass genocide of all Quincy. But after my husband won the 1,000-year blood war and saved Soul Society, we thought that was all behind us. Orihime fiddled with her hands. Then they ordered his execution, she said softly. Quincy aren't considered human and, regardless of circumstance or goodwill, Central 46 could not tolerate any Quincy of such power to be allowed to live. She looked up at them with steel-hard eyes. so we left. Chapter 27. Responsibilities. Ichigo awoke in a hospital bed sometime mid-afternoon. Birds flittered in the late summer and cicadas sung their songs. He stared dazedly at the ceiling, his head cotton full and with no sense of time. There was a clatter at the door as a nurse came in with a wheeled cart. "Oh. You're awake. I'll let them know," the nurse said chipperly as he set the cart to the side and walked out. Some time passed and Chief Suragame, a doctor, and some official-looking man in a suit with an underbite came in. "Good afternoon, Coma-man, woof," Chief Suragame said as he stood with his hands in the pockets of his suit. Ichigo grunted and yawned. The doctor came over and helped him sit up. She pulled over the tray and handed him some energy gummies, a cup of coffee, and an energy bar. Ichigo raised an eyebrow. "Usually you only added one of those things to your diet. You have a natural resistance to stimulants," the doctor supplied helpfully. "Ah," Ichigo said as he popped a gummy into his mouth and chewed slowly. The doctor left and shut the door behind herself. The two men left behind waited politely for Ichigo to eat enough to not look like the support cast in a Resident Evil film. Ichigo set down the half-finished cup of coffee and regarded the two men. "You have mandatory therapy starting today," Chief Suragame said bluntly. Ichigo paused with a gummy halfway to his mouth. "Huh?" he asked. The underbite man interjected. "I'm Agent Wada, from the Hero Public Safety Commission," Wada said as he stepped forward. He wore an expensive-looking suit and carried himself with a serious air. His hair was slicked back and he had a small mouth with a noticeable underbite. "Nice to meet you," Ichigo said slowly as he set the gummy down. "Our recent investigation into your family's origins has brought it to our attention that, while your family has acclimated over the course of the past 8 years, you require rehabilitation services as you have only been conscious and active in our world for the past few months," the man said calmly as he set his briefcase down and pulled out some forms. "Huh?" Ichigo asked wide-eyed as an encyclopedia of paperwork was placed in front of him. "Naturally you'll need to take classes for world history, historical literature, civilian laws, hero laws, villain laws, and we'll have a small test to ensure your basic core education isn't too different from our own. We'll issue you with a certification that you have a high school level education, at the very least," the man said as he set a couple more piles of paperwork beside the first. "Naturally we'll overlook your uncertified participation in the Pro Hero licensing exam in exchange for your cooperation." "Ah," Ichigo said awkwardly as he accepted the work. "Sorry, I didn't know." "Perfectly understandable considering the circumstances," Wada said as he started laying out ring binders full to bursting of more documents with little color-coded tabs sticking out the sides. "Naturally we don't want this to become public knowledge, so we've recruited an appropriate tutor for you." He pulled out a black leather executive document holder with the thinnest collection of papers so far and handed it directly into Ichigo's hands. "He's been filled in on the situation and will be handling your case from here on out." Ichigo flipped open the black leather folder. It contained a progress report and list of completion along with a few cover letter style summaries on the contents of the other piles of paperwork and their purpose. "Aha," Ichigo said, feeling a bit overwhelmed as he stared at the amount of work before him over the top of the black folder. "Your weekly schedule is in the back here," Wada informed him as he gently flipped the pages in the folder Ichigo was holding, pulling out the schedule. "He'll also be providing you with an internship of sorts to ensure you're up to snuff on basic heroics, and will be your heroics teacher from here on out." But think of it as more of a supervisory collaboration between you and another pro for bureaucracy's sake. Wada finished by snapping his briefcase shut and standing up straight. Any questions? Ichigo pulled his attention away from the pile of work. Ah, yeah, I have a work-study student. Who will be accompanying you, of course. Hawks will also help you through completing the necessary paperwork to ensure your student gets full credit and accolades for his work under you. Wada said perfunctorily. Ichigo nodded. I guess that's all, Ichigo said as he scratched the back of his head. His brows furrowed. Is there a time limit for all this? He gestured to the 3 annotated binders and 4 thick stacks of paperwork. As soon as you're able, is preferred, but no, Wada said. You will meet with your therapist in a few hours and Hawks will come by to pick you up and bring you home. Naturally, the Hero Public Safety Commission is sympathetic to your condition. Please do not push yourself too hard, Coma-man. Wada's expression changed to be sympathetic. Ah, thanks, Ichigo said stiffly. If that is all, I will take my leave, Wada said as he bowed, then left the room. A long silence filled the room where Chief Tsuragame eyed the paperwork. I don't envy you, woof, Tsuragame said. Ichigo sighed and flopped his head down into a stack of size 11 legal font. Tsuragame patted his shoulder reassuringly. Your wife was attacked while you were rescuing the students at the summer camp, woof, Tsuragame said casually as he looked out the window at a pair of playful birds. Ichigo's head shot up. What? A new assignment? Hawks asked as he opened the folder to look at the contents. His eyebrows shot up and he whistled. Woo tilde, that's a doozy. Please take this serious, Madam President said while giving him an unimpressed look. Oh, I am, Hawks said as he waved the folder around, totally serious. Besides, I hear he takes a lot of naps. It shouldn't be too difficult to teach him the ropes and keep up my duties. See that you do, and be sure to alert us of any worrying behaviors, Madam President said sternly. Yes, ma'am, Hawks saluted flippantly. She rolled her eyes and excused him. Hawks walked down the hallway at a leisurely pace as he read over the file. Coma-man, huh? He said as he glanced out the window to the city below. He glanced back down at the file. How'd he get his crime rate so low? He mumbled. It's come to our attention that, while your family has acclimated over the course of the past 8 years, you require rehabilitation services as you have only been conscious and active in our world for the past few weeks, the man said as he lay a pile of paperwork upon the coffee table. Huh? Khan asked as the man pulled out more papers from his briefcase. Wait a minute, Khan protested weakly. Naturally, you'll need to take classes, and we'll have a small test to ensure your basic core education isn't too different from our own. We'll issue you with a certification that you have a high school level education, once you've completed the designated coursework, the man said as he set down several ring binders full to bursting with color-coded tabs sticking out the ends. I've never, Khan said weakly. We'll have a representative help you along the citizenship process and private tutors will be provided as necessary to address your education. We don't want this made public, you see, the man said as he lay more paperwork on the coffee table, so the Public Safety Commission will provide these services free of charge. The man rummaged through his briefcase again. Please sign this NDA in regards to publicly releasing any videos regarding the afterlife or other dimensions. The man set a page in front of Khan and handed him a pen. Not so fast, Uryu said as he walked through the front door. Ishida. Khan cried gratefully with the pen dangling in his little paw. Uryu put a hand on his shoulder and gave him a reassuring nod. Only an idiot would be fooled by this ploy, Uryu said as he waved a hand to gesture towards the large amount of paperwork covering the coffee table. Of overwhelming a person in a precarious situation with paperwork, his glasses glinted. I won't let you take advantage of Khan's good nature. Tugata waved at Khan from within the wall, waving his phone side to side with a grin and a wink. Chapter 28. What makes a hero? Who's in Tartarus? Kazui came home from training with his friends to Uncle Ishida lecturing a salaryman, who was dabbing at his sweaty neck with a handkerchief, about taking advantage of Khan because he didn't know any better. Khan turned his little plush head and waved at Kazui with a grin and a wink. Kazui froze, wide-eyed. He's alive? He thought in shock, watching as the stranger bowed and apologized profusely to Khan. Khan's haunted, his father had said at the kitchen island as he ate breakfast. But Khan's your best friend, his mother had said with a frown and an innocent tilt to her head. Khan's really great. Tugata had said with a smile and a thumbs up. Khan in his bag, Khan appearing in random doorways, Khan falling down limp as the doll Kazui had believed he was. Khan's little plush head always being turned in Kazui's direction when he passed by him, creeping him out. Kazui came to the realization that Khan was a master troll, and a king of the long game. You are a troll, Kazui whispered as he walked past them on his way to the kitchen. Khan gave him a wink and a thumbs up. Uncle Ishida had a slight uptick to the corner of his mouth as they glanced at Kazui from the corner of his eye. If you think I'm going to tell you anything about my master, you're dead wrong, Shigaraki hissed out as he glared from the other side of the glass wall. The entire League of Villains had been moved to Tartarus upon the intel of there being a master and a warp quirk user associated with them that was still at large. No chances were being taken with this group after the Hosu City desolation. The interrogating officer looked on coldly. He placed a picture against the glass. Shigaraki's eyes widened. You won't be seeing your master for a while, he said coldly, unless he has a way to regrow limbs. Shigaraki snarled. You bastards! You bastards! He bellowed and thrashed in his binds. The interrogating officer narrowed his eyes. How dare you hurt Sensei, how dare you? When I get out of here I'll destroy all of you. All of you. He screamed the last part so loud his voice went hoarse as he tried to lunge towards the interrogating officer. The officer huffed and walked away. Any luck? His coworker asked when he entered the room, as he twirled around in his chair. No, we won't be getting much out of Shigaraki. Tell them it's unlikely that All for One can regrow limbs but not impossible. We wouldn't have received that kind of response if All for One had the regenerative abilities of the Nomu. On it, the room was filled with typing and he sat down with a sigh. There were more monitors with occupied cells than he was comfortable with. When did they say we were getting more guards? Quote. Next week, his coworker said offhandedly as he sent his message. The one named Dobby's hair was growing in red at the roots. There wasn't a single blemish on his skin after Mrs. Kurosaki had healed him, and he spent a lot of time looking at his reflection and snarling. The officer didn't like the similarities the villain had to someone else he knew, or rather knew of. A hero name? Orihime asked as she mixed dough in the kitchen with Tugata. You have your provisional license, right? Tugata said as he kneaded the dough diligently. Uh-huh. Orihime said, grabbing a ladle full of gelatinous chicken curry and pinching it closed within a ball of dough. Then you need a hero name. Tugata said chipperly. Mine's Lemillion, because I intend to save 1 million people. Quote. Orihime said thoughtfully as she set a filled steaming basket over the stove, how about? Feiheim. Because I have fairies and my name's Orihime. Quote. That's a great name. Tugata said with a smile. Thanks. Tatsuki helped me choose it. She started filling some buns with a raspberry custard. Who's Tatsuki? Tugata asked as he set the dough aside and lay a damp tea towel over the bowl. Orihime looked equal parts happy and sad, and she seemed lost in memories. A dear friend, she said softly, I picked Super Robot Zoom Fairy Shield Cane. She perked up with a grin, bringing a finger to her lips, but Tatsuki said it was too long. Yeah, it is pretty long. Tugata said while he kneaded another ball of dough. There were a lot more hungry people on the streets after the desolation of Hosu City. Orihime and Tugata had been cooking up a storm ever since. Hosu City had even delegated funds to the Kurosaki Hero Agency for their relief efforts. Man, I can't wait until Teach gets better and goes out on patrol with me, Tugata said happily. Orihime nodded. He'll be super surprised. She agreed. Hey there. Ready to head home? Hawks said with his hands in his pockets when Ichigo opened the door to leave his mandated therapy session. Ichigo paused and nodded. You're Hawks? Quote. That's my name, don't wear it out, Hawks said as he held out a hand. Ichigo shook it. Kurosaki Ichigo, he introduced himself. Oh, wow, real names huh? Hawks said, rubbing the back of his head, sure I can't just call you Coma-man? He said with a wink. Do whatever you want, Ichigo shrugged. Hawks gave him 2 thumbs up. Sounds like a plan. Quote. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched sporadically as he gazed at the devastation before him. What the hell happened here? Question mark. He asked as he rubbed his temples. The attack on your wife? Hawks supplied tentatively. Ichigo stared at him with a neutral scowl. An old lady was walking in circles behind Hawks, looking distressed. Ichigo's head peeked out from behind Hawks' wing. What's up? Hawks asked as he turned around. Granny Letty. Ichigo called as he walked briskly over to her. What are you doing here? Quote. Oh~H, my house is gone Coma-man, it's all gone. She wailed as she twisted her hands in distress. Her blue eyes were fretful. Ichigo put a comforting hand around her shoulders and guided her away from the rubble. Come stay with us then, we'll get you taken care of, Ichigo said compassionately as he brought her along with him. That's very kind of you, I don't want to impose, she said anxiously. Ichigo shook his head. No imposition, Orihime likes cooking with friends remember? Ichigo asked as he walked past an astonished Hawks towards his home. You did tell me that, yes, she mumbled as she was led away from the wreckage of her home and garden. Hawks followed along behind them at a leisurely pace. Once they got home, Ichigo got to work preparing an office into a second guest room. Tugata was a great sport and offered to sleep on the couch for the time being. Ichigo promised him that they would be going out to pick up a futon for him that night. He usually bring home strays? Hawks asked Tugata casually. No, Tugata said, but Miss Letty makes chocolates for the people at the elderly homeless camp once a week. We usually pick them up on Sundays as a special treat and distribute them for her. She can't walk down there on her own like she used to. Tugata heaved a sigh and rubbed his neck. I should have checked in on her while Teach was out, he said with a frown. She has a sister out in the country married to a guy named Turnip Head, he added as an afterthought in the following silence. His name's Turnip Head? Hawks asked. Probably not, Tugata admitted, but that's what Miss Letty calls him. Hawks watched Ichigo fret over the elderly woman with a contemplative look. Hosu isn't doing so well, so I'll be in the area, Hawks said. Aren't you based out of Kyushu? Tugata asked. Hawks shrugged. Things are fine over there, and the commission wants me here anyway. I'm doing a fancy co-op with Coma-man here for public morale, he said while pointing a thumb at Coma-man. Tugata grinned. That's great. I look forward to working with you, he said with a grin and a thumbs up. Chapter 29. Coming to terms, Coma-man returns. Shoto Todoroki stared shakily at his reflection in the mirror. The skin was smooth and unblemished, as though an entire lifetime of sin had been wiped away. He hadn't really gone out or left his room much since the summer camp incident. His family probably believed that he was traumatized or something as a result of it. But he ran a shaky hand over the clear skin beside a turquoise eye. It's funny, I can't bear to look at myself when there's nothing there to see, he said solemnly to his reflection. It was the face of a stranger. A little boy who had died long ago. Perhaps he was being overly dramatic. But Shoto punched the mirror hard enough to crack it. In the jagged, distorted image he could almost see himself again. He ran a hand through his hair and looked down at the counter with a heavy sigh and hunched shoulders. He should be over it, he thought he had moved past the hurt. But Shoto? His sister's voice came through the door, are you alright in there? Quote. I'm fine, Shoto responded. His sister took some time to respond. I'll have dinner ready soon. Did you want me to bring it to your room again? She sounded hesitant and hopeful. It made guilt twist in his stomach. Please do, he said through the door. All right, her voice was soft and sad. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration and blew air out of his nose in a hiss. All right, try to find any pets over there, and I'll look over here. I'll come by to check your work in a little bit, Ichigo said as he pointed to each side of a torn-up street with demolished buildings on either side. Yes, sir. Lemillion saluted energetically as he walked over and closed his eyes to spread out his senses. Hawks stood and watched with his hands in his pockets, red feathers flittering to and fro to assist where he was able. When Lemillion found something he would pop into the concrete and appear somewhere else. They found about a dozen parakeets, enough small dogs to lose track of them, and a few indoor cats. Ingenium was in charge of transport, and they filled a few trucks lined with kennels. The pets would be brought to an animal shelter for their owners to find later. You two related or something? Hawks asked Lemillion once they were heading back home for the end of their shift. No. Why would you think that? Lemillion asked. You just have similar quirks, is all, Hawks said with a grin. Ichigo turned his head to give him a baffled look. Oh, Lemillion said as he dropped a fist into his open palm. You mean the search technique? That's a skill Teach's been teaching me, not a quirk at all. He said cheerfully as he pointed a finger in the air. Ichigo's confusion cleared and he gave Hawks an amused look. Busted tilde, Hawks thought. A technique? Hawks asked. Yeah. When you go to use your quirk, there's a little spark, like lighting a barbecue, only your quirk is the barbecue, where you engage your Raryoku to activate your quirk. Lemillion was an animated talker, with plenty of large gestures and a matching amount of enthusiasm. If you exhaust your quirk, you'll be able to feel it better, and once you get that, then you can start working on moving your Raryoku independently. Ichigo grinned as he watched the boy gesticulate wildly with his excitement. Once you figure that out, you can start sensing Reiatsu. Everything has Reiatsu, but people and animals have the most, and Reiatsu is like a thumbprint. No two are the same. Hawk's eyebrows were up in his hair. That's pretty comprehensive, he said casually. It is. And it's helped me a lot with improving how I utilize my quirk. Lemillion said with a cheerful grin. We'll be moving on to reinforcing your body tomorrow, Ichigo said to Lemillion. Sorry we couldn't fit in aerial combat. But I want you to have a good grasp of the basics before you start school again. I don't want you picking up bad habits trying to figure it out on your own in class, Ichigo interjected as they neared the front door. Hey, don't worry about it. I'm just happy you gave me the opportunity, Lemillion reassured. He went inside to chat with Orihime and help out in the kitchen. Ichigo stayed behind to talk to Hawks. You know you could just ask, right? Ichigo said calmly. Are all your techniques teachable? Like that big move back with the wild cats, Hawks asked shamelessly. No, Ichigo responded, I have a power that's unique to me alone, like everyone else. But everyone can use the power contained in their soul. It's just a matter of noticing it, he shrugged. Then why hasn't anyone here done it? Hawks leaned back and rested his hands in his pockets with a serious expression. Ichigo looked at him strangely. What makes you think they haven't? Quote. Dorms. Orihime said as she regarded the letter with a frown. Kazui stood nervously fiddling his hands. I don't know about that. Your father just got better, and there are things only he can teach you about your quirk, Kazui. She said apologetically. Kazui's shoulders slumped. Orihime gave her son a contemplative look, tapping the letter to her mouth. Maybe if they're willing to work out some accommodations, she said as she went to grab some paper and a pen, I'll send them a letter. Kazui perked up and nodded enthusiastically. Please do. Kazui went to go up the stairs but paused. Oh, and Mom? He asked, bending down so that his head could be seen past the first floor ceiling. Iida wanted to thank you in person for healing his brother. Is it all right if he comes over? Quote. Sure. We'd love to have your friends over. Orihime said with a smile. Even though you and Dad are so busy? Kazui asked tentatively. Orihime gave him a soft look. We're good at making time, even when we're busy, she said. Teachable? Madam President asked. That's what he said, Hawks said with a yawn. She gazed at him contemplatively. Hawks waited with a pinky in his ear. His phone chimed and he pulled it out of his pocket. See if he's willing to share that knowledge, she said. Hawks tapped his phone screen. Sure thing, he said absently. And take this seriously, she grumbled. Hawks put his phone away and smiled. Always. He gave her a smarmy salute and flew out an open window. Later that night, Hawks found out how Coma-man kept his crime rate so low. It was around 2 a.m., and Hawks was lazily soaring through the air after his meeting with Madam President. Down below was a man lifting something heavy and moving to smash in a store's windows. Hawks moved to intercept and then it happened. Coma-man, dressed only in a pair of pink pajama shorts with little cartoon strawberries, appeared beside him wielding a sandal in one hand. His expression was frightening, exasperated by the sheer amount of muscle on the guy. Hawks had been under the impression that he was fairly lean. "What are you doing?" Coma-man said jump-scare style. The man screamed, like a ghost had just popped into existence to scare the hell out of him, and dropped his makeshift ram. "CCC Coma-man," the man said as he trembled in fright, eyeing the sandal held in Coma-man's hand warily. "Go home," and quite trying to make the world a more miserable place, Coma-man warned, clenching the sandal until it creaked, and the man nodded rapidly before running off. Coma-man picked up the makeshift ram with a sigh and flickered out of existence. Hawks floated in the air, stunned, for a beat. "Well," he said to himself as he rubbed the back of his head, "that's one way of doing it." He followed the fleeing man, who actually went home as instructed. Hawks drifted close to an open window. "Coma-man's out of his coma," the man said. A collection of other people groaned. Hawks narrowed his eyes and made a note of the address. He'd keep an eye on it during his stay in Hosu. Chapter 30. "Hey, Lemillion," Ichigo said as he stood next to the rubble of an office building. Wind rustled Lemillion's cape. Hawks looked over in interest. "Yeah?" Lemillion asked. Ichigo picked up a large piece of steel-reinforced concrete one-handed and tossed it with deliberately casual wrist movements. "I expect you to do this by the end of the week," Ichigo said with a neutral scowl as he caught and tossed the large chunk casually in one hand with his other tucked in his jeans pocket. It dropped into his palm with a thunderous boom, and the ground beneath his feet cracked at the strain with each toss. Lemillion had stars in his eyes and he clenched both fists in his excitement. "Ah yeah. I'm all fired up," Lemillion said excitedly. "Good," Ichigo said as he set the piece down carefully. He gave Lemillion a serious look, "because it'll be the hardest thing you've done up till now." Lemillion returned the look with his own daring grin. "I'll count on it." His eyes were full of conviction. "That's a good look," Ichigo thought with a fond grin. Hawks stared blankly at the large piece of rubble and then between the two of them. He scratched the back of his neck and hunched his shoulders as his feathers bristled. "You've got to be kidding," Hawks thought with a sigh. "Something wrong?" Ichigo asked with an upward lilt to the corner of his mouth. "Nope," Hawks said with a grin, popping the P. "You could always hire me to train you if you're interested," Ichigo offered. "Ahaha, no thanks. I'm doing pretty well for myself," Hawks said. "Your prices are outrageous." He thought. He had mentioned Madam President's proposal in passing, and Coma-man had presented him with pricing and payment plans along with one of those cheesy, "I can make you as strong as All Might" sales pitches you see at hero course-focused dojos. Only his charisma and power made you believe he could actually do it. "Suit yourself," Ichigo shrugged. Nedzu stood calmly by the window as he watched the dorms being built with his arms crossed behind his back. The new dorm system we're putting into place isn't just to ensure the safety of our students. It's also how we're addressing one of the threats we've yet to take care of. All for one. A feeling of unease has settled upon our school. To help alleviate that, we'll be holding a private behind-the-scenes investigation." Nedzu frowned at his own thoughts. "It pains me to suspect not just the teachers, but the students as well. Unfortunately right now I have no other choice. All for One is at large, and I have no doubt this will have serious ramifications as time passes." Who knows what he'll do now that he isn't held back by his protege, Nezu thought as he tapped a finger against his wrist. What Ua needs right now is positive energy and revitalization. We must remind the children that there's a bright future ahead of them. Despite what they've endured, Nezu thought as he gazed out at the dorm buildings. He held a letter in his paw. But first, we'll need to convince the parents. The letter had a little strawberry sticker with Ichigo written with the kanji for #1 guardian inside of the fruit holding the flap closed. Inside the letter was written in pink strawberry scented ink from Mrs. Kurosaki. He appreciated their dedication to a determined theme. His whiskers twitched as a small smile crossed his face. Ichigo and Hawks were in the living room surrounded by papers and beer cans along with a few takeout containers. They had a few incident reports to fill out, what with the empty desolate building attracting the wrong sort of attention from the shady sort of city dwellers, and Hawks was giving him the rundown on student work-study paperwork. Apparently, Ichigo was supposed to be sending in progress reports to the school. Whoops. And then you just send this report off to the student's school, Hawks said as he leaned back and cracked his neck. Got it, thanks for the help. Ichigo put the paperwork into a document envelope and sealed it with one of the stickers Yuzu had designed to sell at her cafe. She had a lot of strawberry-themed things with his name on it. Literally. Had for years too, so it wasn't a recent, sell my brother's hero merch thing either. Though Yuzu was also doing that. She and Ryu had been designing Coma-man merchandise for the cafe since Ichigo'd gone viral. Most of it was poking fun at him, or funny in some way. He didn't mind though. You did surprisingly well on writing a comprehensive report for your first time, Hawks said casually as he stood up and stretched. Yeah, I used to be the head doctor at an emergency clinic, Ichigo said as he set the paperwork to the side on the desk they'd shoved into the living room when Granny Letty moved in. Really? Hawk's eyebrows rose as he sat down on the couch to get comfortable. Heck of a job change. Not really, Ichigo said as he reclined on the floor with his back to the couch and looked up. Lost in thought, the Manos Grande made it pretty similar. I do patrols until the early hours of the morning, purify any hollow, go to bed, get up, and start the day again. Slow days at the clinic were the best. We'd get hollow attack victims too sometimes. Hawks whistled. Wow, you must have made a lot of money if you were the only one taking on all those hollows, they're like Nomu, right? Hawks asked as he crossed his arms behind his head and leaned back against the cushions. Ichigo snorted. Something like that. And I didn't get paid. Hollows had to be dealt with in a way that normal people didn't notice, so everything was completely secret. Ichigo sipped from his half-empty beer. A cricket chirped outside the window. Quote dot. 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 How many did you have to fight? Quote. A handful on a good night, a few hundred on a bad night. My friends helped on the bad nights. On a bad night. Dot. Dot. Quote. Hawks muttered as he eyed him. And the government agency responsible for taking care of that. Quote. They usually sent 2 or so of their worst officers to scare them into working harder. They never lasted long. I can't tell you how many of them we had to swoop in and save. One guy even got ripped in half. Ichigo took another swig of beer. Hawks had picked a good brand when he came over with a case in one hand and a case of paperwork in the other. Orihime got him squared away in a few minutes though. I think he retired early. Ichigo said thoughtfully to the ceiling tile. A long silence followed where the rustling of feathers and frog song filled the air. Quote dot, 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 dot. And they never paid you. Quote. Nope, Ichigo said, popping the P, it's fine though. Ichigo waved a hand through the air. Hollows are attracted to high concentrations of Reiatsu, and we gave off a lot of Reiatsu. Ichigo rubbed his chin, which is what attracted them in the first place. Ichigo crossed his arms behind his head as he reclined. Soul Society decided that since we were responsible for drawing in the hollow in the first place, that we were responsible for taking care of the problem. It made high school difficult, and med school, and work. But we got through it. So Killer Ghost Nomu were attracted to you because... Dot. Dot question mark. Hawks drawled. We smell delicious. People with lots of Reiatsu make the best meals for hollows, so they hunt them down. The crickets must be having a turf war with the frogs outside. Both had gotten loud and sounded like they were facing off outside the window. How old were you? Hawk's voice sounded a bit higher than usual. 15. Another drawn-out silence. You know that's not normal. Dot. Dot. Or ethical. Dot. Right. Hawks said slowly as he eyed him warily. Oh, I know, Ichigo said calmly as met his gaze, I know. Why would you work for people like that? Hawks wondered as he stared at Ichigo. Ichigo shrugged. The people who lived in Karakura needed me to do it, Ichigo said honestly, so I did it. Hawks stared at him. Ichigo crawled over and stuck his hand to the back of a bottom shelf on his desk and brought out a bottle. Scotch? He asked, tilting the bottle side to side. Hawks just stared at him. Sure, he muttered. Ichigo poured 2 glasses. Hey, I'm heading out too. Dot. Dot. Why are you drinking? Kazui asked as he stopped on his way past the couch. Because paperwork sucks, Ichigo replied. Quote dot. 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 But how do you know you filled it out correctly? Dot. Dot. If you're drunk. Kazui gave them a strange look while pointing at the piles. Kazui, Ichigo said, you have never, and will never, see me drunk, he promised, now go have fun with your friends. Kazui eyed him critically as he made his way out of the house. And don't get anyone pregnant. Ichigo hollered as Kazui left out the front door. Dad. Kazui slammed the door shut. Ichigo cackled. Chapter 31. Shadows in the Deep. Ichigo got the mail with a yawn and picked the paper up off of the lawn. He brought them inside, grabbed his laptop, and sat down at the table with a cup of coffee. Kazui lurched his way down the stairs like the undead and beelined for the coffee machine. Ichigo opened up his emails and took a hearty gulp of coffee. Tugata lurched his way down the stairs, and in a mimicry of Kazui, also beelined for the coffee pot. Kazui and Tugata sat side by side and groaned as they cradled their cups. They both gave each other a side eye. Have fun training with Dad? Kazui asked with pronounced bags under his eyes. Tugata grunted and sipped his coffee, even darker bags under his own eyes. Ah, that reminds me, Ichigo said as he pulled a small package out of his pockets and handed it to Tugata. Tugata opened it slowly and pulled out a pair of brown shorts with a heavily muscled flexing bear along the side of one leg. Boxers? Tugata asked. To cover your bare butt, Ichigo said as he plucked the garment out of Tugata's hands and cycled a bit of reishi in them, waving them through the counter. Ooh, ghost shorts. Ichigo said as they phased through the solid material, setting them back in Tugata's hands. Tugata looked at him with watery eyes and beamed. "Bare butt for my bare butt," he said softly with a smile, his energy still sapped from training the night before. "Thanks Teach." Quote, "Be sure to thank Ishida too when you see him next, he did most of the work," Ichigo said as he replied to an email from Kazui's principal. Tugata nodded and took a long drag from his coffee. "Oh, and you have the day off, get some rest." Tugata looked like he was ready to cry from relief. "You're the best Teach," he said as he clutched his shorts and his coffee close to his chest. "Oh, and I made breakfast," he pointed to the stove behind them. The boys each approached it cautiously and perked up when a pan of very normal omelette rice greeted them. "There's baked fish in the oven, lemon," Ichigo said as he typed away. "Orihime's staying with Yuzu in Musutafu while she completes some healing commissions at the hospital over there, so she won't be back until tomorrow morning. We'll order in, so you boys need to decide which restaurants you want me to order from this afternoon and tonight." They both looked like they wanted to cry. "You're the best dad, Teach," they said in unison. Ichigo sipped his coffee and choked when he got the reply email. All of his attention became focused on his email correspondence from then on. Kazui and Tugata shared a look. Kazui shrugged and ate his omelette rice with a happy hum. Nedzu typed rapidly upon his keyboard with a sharp gleam to his eyes. "Oh ho. If you think extortionate pricing will deter me, Coma-man, you're sorely mistaken." Nedzu thought gleefully as he cackled while accepting Coma-man's outrageous proposal. He'd messaged the man immediately after receiving Tugata Mirio's progress report. It also worked towards convincing the Kurosakis to allow their son to participate in the new dorm system. Once he had received the HPSC's intel that Coma-man was willing to impart teachable skills likened to quirks, he had begun plotting. Ensuring Uwa offered the pinnacle of heroics training had always been his prerogative. It would be foolish of him not to jump on such innovations the moment the opportunity presented itself. "I'll see if he's open to providing training to staff as well." Nedzu typed away happily with his tail waving in his excitement. Hawks splashed water on his face and looked in the mirror. His face was solemn and serious. And then he pouted. Stretched out his cheeks and made a face. Slapped his cheeks and squished them together. Sighed with an exhausted deadpan stare. His phone chimed and he perked up, picking it up to look at the notification. Coma-man had sent a message over the Hero network. "I'm free if anyone needs backup," stated the message. Already 14 people had responded as far as 3 hours out by train from Hosu. "They needed me to do it, so I did it." The memory came unbidden and Hawks messed up his hair with a groan. "I'm also free," Hawks posted. Logistics were worked out over the public network feed, public for heroes that is. And suddenly his evening up until the early hours of the morning was full. Coma-man sent him a winky face offering to fly him to his last appointment if he was too tired by then. An annoyed tick formed in his eyebrow. Coma-man had accepted twice as many requests as Hawks. It may have stung his pride a bit. But looking at the logistics of his commitments for the evening, he couldn't turn it down. "Sure thing." He responded with his own personalized smiling Hawks emoji. "See ya then," Coma-man responded. Hawks sighed and leaned against the tiled wall of his bathroom. He stared at the ceiling, lamenting his lost free time. Then he did some stretches and got ready. Tonight would be a busy night for him. In the gloom between dimensions of festering darkness waited. Its travel was slow and with little momentum. without any sustenance to feed off of, nor nearness to its prey. An echo of power, of food, danced in that caustic place. A single eye opened wide, amber iris glowing in the gloom. Half of its face was gone, eaten away. But soon it would know the feast. Its nostrils flared and an ancient hunger filled it. It drifted slowly on, and in the far distance it could see the light of that other place. Full of delicious scents. Prey. A half-disintegrated tongue wriggled about in the air. Tasting. A twisted macabre grin distorted its horrendous visage. In a hospital office, Uryu's head lifted up from his paperwork. An ominous feeling hung in the air, and he narrowed his gaze as he spread his senses out. Nothing. He tapped his finger in agitation upon his desk and waited. Still nothing. "Dr. Ishida, is everything all right?" a nurse asked as they passed by his open door. Ishida tore his attention back to the hospital. "Everything's fine," Uryu reassured. "I don't like this feeling," he thought as his gaze drifted towards the window once the nurse left. Toshinori sat patiently in the waiting room. He had an appointment, but people had come flocking to the hospital in droves once news that the fairy hero, Feihime, was performing free healing services there. He grinned at a young man who was weeping in the arms of his parents. He had wheeled in, legless, and walked out a few short minutes later on two sturdy legs. A villain incident, most likely, Toshinori thought solemnly. There were an awful lot of amputees in the lobby. A little girl with a prosthetic arm covered in hero stickers poked his arm. "Yes?" Toshinori asked. She clutched a plush Mirio firmly in one hand. "Why are you here?" she asked. Toshinori lifted an eyebrow and pulled up his shirt. She stuck her little face up close to the scar. "Wicked," the little girl said with a gleam in her eyes. "She couldn't be older than 8. I bet you were a badass hero when you got that," she said excitedly, shoving her little plush toy at him. "Give Miri a squeeze, she makes the scars hurt less." Toshinori squeezed the little plush toy's fist between two fingers with a humoring grin towards the little girl. "Asuka, you better not be troubling that nice man," who Toshinori assumed was the girl's mother said. "I'm not, he needed Miri-chan," Asuka said with a serious frown on her little face. Toshinori chuckled, which caused him to cough wetly into his fist. The old man beside him handed him a pocket tissue from a little packet he had. "Thanks," Toshinori said. The man turned his head to nod at him, his green eyes friendly if a bit unfocused. He had a serious head injury that had scarred over long ago on one side of his head. Toshinori wondered how he had survived. Chapter 32. Power. Tugata shouted as he pushed as much Riryoku into his punch as he was able. Ichigo caught the fist and grunted. The ground beneath his left foot cracked and he grinned. Tugata followed up the strike with a barrage of attacks, not wasting any energy and prioritizing efficiency. Ichigo dodged, parried, and returned every strike with a small grin quirking the corner of his mouth. "Hey, you're doing pretty good, kid," Ichigo said as he disappeared and reappeared beside Tugata's open side where his fist was still extended. "Now do better." Ichigo's speed and strength increased marginally and Tugata felt like he was back at square one again, desperately trying to keep up. They continued for another hour like that. The sun began to dip down and wash the sky in hues of oranges. Tugata's entire body was shaking, his gym uniform drenched in sweat, and he heaved in great gulps of air. Ichigo was only marginally out of breath. Like he was going for a satisfying jog. Tugata counted it as a win regardless. That's enough for today, Ichigo said as he caught Tugata's weak strike. Tugata nodded and relaxed his shoulders, letting the stillness wash over him, and collected himself. Ichigo started doing post-workout stretches. Tugata joined him shakily and accepted the sports drink that was tossed to him. "Hey," Ichigo said while Tugata lifted both hands up into the air together and leaned to the side. Tugata turned his head towards Ichigo. "You're doing a lot better than I thought you would. So don't get discouraged when I up the difficulty." Tugata grinned and his eyes crinkled at the corners. "I'm not discouraged at all," he said, and his stretching became a bit more invigorated. "In fact, I think it's really flattering that you believe I can handle that kind of power." He smiled brightly. Ichigo chuckled. "That reminds me," Ichigo said casually and stretched his shoulder out, "don't punch anyone else like you do me, they'll probably die." "Huh?" Tugata paused in his stretch with wide eyes. Ichigo scratched his cheek. "You know what? I'll pick up some of those crash dummies with the die inside so you can get a good read on how much force is too much, and what's actually necessary." He stretched his arms high in the sky with a yawn. "It wouldn't be good to accidentally kill someone." "Ahahaha, yeah, definitely don't want to do that," Tugata trailed off. "Sometimes I can't tell if Teach is kidding or not," he thought as he stared at his fist. Ichigo walked inside and Tugata eyed the damaged tree in the corner of the yard. Ichigo had dodged that strike and Tugata's fist had gone right through it earlier. On second thought, he's probably not joking, Tugata though, as a bead of nervous sweat dripped down his temple. "Ah man, Tamaki was already telling me how I'm terrible at holding back." He stared at his fist like it was a snake ready to bite him. "Well, crap," Tugata said as he rubbed the back of his head. A plush rabbit shot out of the open sliding door that led to the back porch from the house, and smacked him in the face. "No being depressed," Ichigo hollered from within the house. Tugata caught the doll in his hands as it fell. It had a cute strawberry pin on one ear. He grinned at the plush. "What am I worried about?" he asked himself as he looked up at the setting sun. "I have a great teacher." "It's finished then?" All for One asked. The little Nomu slithered in its habitat. A slick black lizard that could almost be mistaken for a snake when still. "Yes," Garaki said as he rubbed his hands together, with all the bells and whistles. "It'll keep up to 15 designated entities completely hidden. It wasn't easy to get it that high, let me tell you." "Spare me the details," All for One interjected. "Of course Master," Garaki conceded, "I call him Nightcrawler. He has the basic command set up, like the standard Nomu. He'll keep any designated entities within a 3-mile radius concealed at all times, and has the ability to teleport a single entity along with itself up to 2 miles away. And he even has the ability to make himself invisible for easy concealment. You'll be able to infiltrate the next Feiheim hospital event with little trouble. Assuming she doesn't recognize you on sight." Garaki chuckled into his fist. "I will say, I can't wait to experiment with that fascinating quirk." He rubbed his hands together greedily. All for One hummed as he regarded the little lizard. "And the high end?" All for One asked. Garaki deflated. "Progress on the high ends is... several months out at best," he grumbled. All for One waved a hand, his other arm was still a stump. Something that Shadow Man had done had slowed the regeneration to a crawl, and it was only healed down to above the elbow. "It's no matter, I'll retrieve them myself," he said. Garaki eyed the arm warily. "You're going to retrieve Shigaraki and his little group before your appointment with Feiheim?" Garaki asked casually as he fiddled with some equipment. "No," All for One said quietly, as he ran a finger down the Nomu's spine. "I'll be retrieving Himiko Toga before my appointment with Feiheim." All for One began to leave and paused to look over his shoulder at the doctor on his way out the door. "Prepare a vial of blood of someone appropriately forgettable from your hospital." His shoes clacked on the tiled floor as he left. Garaki smiled, pleased, and regarded Nightcrawler in its glass habitat. "It's good to have him back," he whispered to the creature. Nightcrawler stuck out a gray tongue as though it were a chameleon trying to catch a fly. Ichigo stood along with the other UA teachers with a slight tick to his eyebrow. They were having a before-school meeting. All gathered around in a room full of desks equipped with computers and filing cabinets. "How did I get here?" Ichigo thought rhetorically, referring to his hiring as a teacher. He had been outmaneuvered by the principal, he knew, but how the little mouse man had gotten such an extensive contract out of him still felt like a mystery. Not to say that Ichigo hadn't gotten an extremely beneficial contract. A lot of their correspondence consisted of the principal asking what it would take to get Ichigo to agree to X, Ichigo listing something outrageous that no one would agree to, and the principal immediately agreeing and putting that into the contract. Leaving Ichigo unable to refute it, since he had already agreed to it. "We have an exciting new member of staff, Coma-man, who will be teaching a few elective classes starting this new term," Nedzu said chipperly as he clapped his paws together. Ichigo's new co-workers gave him a round of casual welcomes. "I look forward to working with you," Ichigo said dully. It was the middle of the night in Hosu City and the streets were mostly quiet. "What are you doing?" Lemillion said as he popped into existence beside a woman holding a brick up to smash someone's car window in. She screamed like a ghost just popped into existence to scare the hell out of her. Nothing. She stammered as she hid the brick behind her back. "Really? 'Cause it looks like that car's in mortar danger," Lemillion quipped back with a grin. Ichigo snorted with a grin and shook his head as he watched from atop a nearby building. "Hey, how'd that whole summer camp thing turn out for you?" Ichigo asked Uryu as he laid some groceries on the Kurosaki kitchen island. "What do you mean?" Uryu asked as he organized the sandwiches on a display platter. "The legalities side of things," Ichigo asked as he helped set up a vegetable tray. "I flashed my license and walked away like a normal person," Uryu said while giving him an odd look. "Did you hit your head or something?" he asked while putting a wrist to Ichigo's forehead. Ichigo gave him a deadpan stare. "You do feel sort of warm. You're still attending your appointments with Recovery Girl, right?" Quote. Ichigo averted his eyes. "I haven't had any issues lately." He scratched his cheek. Uryu smacked him with a fish sandwich. "Ow. What the hell, Uryu?" Ichigo said as he rubbed his pink cheek, snatching the offending bun out of Uryu's hand with a grumpy scowl. "You won't be fully recovered for at least a couple years unless you go to those appointments," Uryu said firmly as he brandished an accusatory finger in Ichigo's face. "I don't care if you feel like you could take on Aizen and win." Ichigo averted his eyes. Go.to. "Your appointments? Or so help me Ichigo," Uryu warned with a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Okay." Ichigo put his hands up in surrender with a wide-eyed look. "Tisk." Uryu looked at the fish sandwich in Ichigo's hand. "And why do you keep picking those out?" Ichigo regarded the bun stuffed with a whole fish in his hand. What, you don't like fins and fish heads in your sandwich? Ichigo threw the smushed sandwich in the trash and pat his hands clean of bread crumbs. Uryu gave him a deadpan stare. Unfortunately, this part is over. I hope you enjoyed it. My apologies for all those quotes. Please have a good morning, afternoon, evening or night. See you next time, faves.